ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Welcome to Coach Gurbani's A Shabad a Day. Our recitation today will be the third pauri of Jup Bani, which proceeds as follows. And today we will try to render it in English and see what the reaction is. Some acclaim your might, but who can describe your sway? Some praise your gifts as signs of your display. Some say you are the fount of all virtues and beauty. Some proclaim that you reside in knowledge as the complex conceptualizations of scriptures. Some worship you as creator, the one who also reduces to clay. Some glorify you as the life giver, who redeems as well as slays. Beyond reach, you appear to some. To many, in the here and now you are. You defy all description, try as we might. You provide without tiring, we tire from receiving. For eons we have been sustained. Your hukam directs your creation, says Nanak. You are forever in bloom, without a care. So what we have learned so far in the Jup Bani is that our relationship and response to hukam will determine whether we are in a state of satyara, which is the end of life or the goal of life, or whether our vision of that goal is still obscured by the wall of Kur. And we discovered in the second verse that the wall of Kur, the wall of falsity, was identified as hukam. So now a brief note on hukam is all that is possible in this podcast, given the constraints that we are in. But be assured that daily engagement with Bani will gradually unfold the meaning, not only of Haume, but other key concepts as well. So we urge you to stay in the process and not to lose patience. Now, Haume is a compound word formed by conjoining two Sanskrit roots, hamam and mamam. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but I understand that both of these words signify the subjective sense of a personal identity, the I, that we are all familiar with, and its possessive me, through which we relate to the world. So Haume equates to me, or I, me. We also notice that in verse 2, Guruji expresses Haume and hukam as a relationship. Nanak hukme je bujje, ta haume kahe na koi. Hukam and haume cannot coexist, even though hukam is the source of haume. Haume arises from hukam through the principle of individuation. And this is the process by which the absolute one, the undifferentiated one, through its power, differentiates itself into isolated bubbles of consciousness that you and I come to inhabit and through which we experience the world around us, the world of phenomena. We also discovered that our attempts to describe hukam are simply feeble approximations because the divine chronicle is, at the end of the day, indescribable. And yet, we feel impelled to describe hukam, to perceive it in the way that we see the world. And this is really the theme of Pauri 3, where Guruji tells us that some see the creator in terms of Tan, the force, the power or capacity that seems to support life. To many, the dispositions of a good life, the gifts, these are signs of the presence of this creator. Yet others think about it in terms of qualities and virtues that we seem to be endowed with. Then there are, of course, the fruitless discussions on the Creator's farness or nearness, and the self-defeating project of trying to find the Creator through scriptural knowledge and esoteric practices. So to many of us, life and death must imply a Creator and a destroyer who appears to be beyond reach and yet seems to be immediate. Now, to all this, Guruji is telling us the Creator, Hukmi, remains impervious to our perceptions. It continues to sustain us through the ages, blissfully enjoying its creation. So we've noticed here that all of these attempts stem from our conceptualizations. So our conceptions of Hukam stem from our needs. They reflect our fears and expectations. Now, the last couplet of this stanza offers some insight, some further insight, if you will, as to the nature of this Creator to whom we should turn. First is Denda de lende thakpahe juga jugantar khai khai. It speaks to a Creator that does not sit apart from its creation, but is intimately and forever involved in sustaining creation. It is the life force. Second, Hukmi hukum jalaye ra nanak hukme nanak vikse ve parwa signifies the process of creation. Sustenance and destruction is not random, but being controlled, regulated, and directed by the owner of the cosmic will, the Hukmi of the Hukam. And this being burgeons forth spontaneously and harmoniously, enjoying its creation. So what conclusion or conclusions can we draw from this passage? We feel that this stanza can be approached in two different ways. But in order to do that, we need to examine the word gave and its alliterative use in this passage. You'll notice that Guruji has used gave in every line virtually. I mean, it starts off with gave. So I think some focus on gave is necessary. Gave, as you all know, literally means to sing. But Guru Nanak is not talking about the act of singing. Rather, we should view this gave as pointing to the essence of singing, which is melodic harmony. And I think there lies the clue. Harmonizing ourselves or to be in rhythm with Hukam. So the two interpretations that we are suggesting reflect the different meanings of gave. For the ego conditioned, gave is simply a ritual, and Hukam is perceived through personal conceptions driven by personal needs because the universe seems so alien. But for those who have dropped their ego, gave is a matter of being at home in the universe. Therefore, gave for them becomes true glorification. Glorification means actualizing Hukam in their lives. So if this passage is viewed from their perspective of those who are in unison with Hukam, it reads somewhat differently. They glorify the Hukmi, whose power and majesty can only be known if it chooses to give you the strength, whose signs and footprints are visible through its creation, whose beauty and harmony abounds, whose essence the scriptures try to capture, who establishes and then demolishes the order of things, who is the life's force. You will notice also that from this perspective, each of the terms used here, Tan, Dat, Gunvadiyanya, Char, are signifiers of Naam. This is indeed what Guru Nanak himself did. He glorified and he sang. And Sikhi is expressed more in music rather than in logical propositions. So that's why the message of Gurbani is also delivered to us in song and poetry, not logic and proposition. Now, this is not to suggest that we should drop intellect and reason. We must simply recognize their limits and the danger they pose if practiced without the melodic element. We kind of become dry and brittle, khushk in Punjabi, lacking the juice of life, the ras. Through singing and glorification, singing in its essence, being in rhythm with Hukam, a human begins to experience the presence of that which is being glorified. So the lesson is that spiritual journeys like the one we are on should be aided by reason, but accompanied by music. A Sikh life must be precise, mathematical, and musical at the same time. With that, I leave you. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.